Emily and I went for a medical checkup. I was diagnosed with cervical cancer. Margaret immediately kicked me out. She said, "I've looked it up. It's difficult to treat and expensive. And you can't have children in the future. Get a divorce quickly. Don't drag my son down," Emily said gloatingly. "Wasn't it because you didn't pay enough attention to your health? That's how you got infected," Lucas stammered. "We really aren't suitable for each other. Let's get a divorce." After the divorce, I went to the hospital for a checkup. It turned out that I was perfectly healthy. It was me, Emily, who had cervical cancer. Recently, I've been feeling a bit unwell. I'm going to the hospital for a full medical checkup. Emily heard about this from Lucas. She insisted on going with him. She is notoriously stingy. She is in her late 20s, but doesn't work. She tries to imitate the young people, dyes her hair pink and purple, and dresses weirdly. She always tries to get money from Lucas for pocket money. Lucas especially spoils her, his only sister. He always gives in to her requests. Every time I disagree, he says I'm a selfish only child. I don't understand the relationship between them. This time was no different. She asked me to pay for her sister's medical examination. I spent 2,000 yuan on a full medical examination for her sister. Not only was she ungrateful, but she went home and complained to Margaret and Lucas. "Mom, brother, I think Sophia is being too dramatic. She's obviously not sick, but she still wanted to get a medical examination. Isn't that a waste of our family's money? In my opinion, Sophia is just being paranoid. She might have done something shameful outside. She's afraid Lucas will find out. She's putting on an innocent act." I clenched my fists. Emily has never liked me. I've known that for a long time. Lucas had a first love before marrying me. That girl and Emily were good friends. Margaret didn't like the woman because she was an orphan. Her family was poor. She forced them to break up. Emily didn't dare blame her mother, so she took it out on me. She often mocked me. She wanted to get rid of me, so she could make way for her best friend. But her best friend got married long ago. She's 5 months pregnant. Besides, I'm also a victim. Before we got married, Lucas told me that he had never been in a relationship before. I was his first girlfriend. I knew that Emily was unhappy, so I always gave her face. I let her save face. "You've really gone too far. You're just making things up and calling me immoral without any proof." I sneered. I said to Emily, "You're not even married yet. Why do you say such dirty things all the time? If you keep this up, you won't be able to get married at 37, let alone 27. You're such a nuisance. Who says I can't find a partner? I'm just not interested. You think everyone is like you, stealing other people's boyfriends. You shameless jerk." Emily's eyes widened. She was so angry she wanted to come over and hit me. She had been set up on blind dates since she turned 20, for 7 whole years. It was either because the guy was short or ugly, or because his family was poor and had no power. Before that, some old ladies had been busy introducing her to men. In front of everyone, called the man short and poor. He was not good enough for her. She also said that the old woman was greedy for the matchmaking fee. The old woman was so angry that she fell out with Margaret's family on the spot. They never got along again. Margaret was unhappy when she heard me criticize Emily. "What are you saying? Emily has to marry someone with good conditions. Of course she has to choose carefully. What business is it of yours, an outsider? Is this what your mother taught you?" Margaret glared at me angrily. Her face was exactly the same as Emily's. She had been unhappy with me for a long time. When they first agreed to let me marry Lucas, they were actually eyeing our family's wealth. But my parents weren't stupid. They could see right away that Lucas' family was no pushover. They firmly opposed my marrying into the family, but I felt that Lucas was sincere with me. I married into his family despite their opposition. My parents were furious. The 1 million yuan dowry they had prepared for me was all frozen. They even threatened to disown me. Margaret saw that my family didn't give me a dowry. The bride price was reduced from 88,000 to 800. Not long after the wedding, Margaret's true colors showed. She was always finding fault with me. After she found out that I earned 10,000 yuan a month, her attitude softened a bit. She finally gave me some face. But when I said that I couldn't sell Emily as a bride price, Margaret's face immediately fell. It's like she's lost a relative. I sneered. I shot back. My mother didn't teach me to go after rich men if I'm to blame. It's because I was blind. I had to marry Lucas. If I hadn't married him, I would have had a dowry of 1 million plus a big house in the city center. I wouldn't have to live in this small, rundown house with all these messy people. I know exactly what Margaret cares about most. so I'm going to pick on her weak points. The more she thinks about my family's money, the more I let her see it but not get it. This is also my true heart. Although my parents are not rich, they have never been stingy with me as their only child. Lucas only earns $8,000 in a month. He also has to support his sister and his mother. He doesn't have the means to take care of me. Lucas saw that I was serious. He quickly stepped forward and said, "Sophia, my mother doesn't mean anything by it. She just wants my sister to find a good husband. Besides, if you hadn't insisted on the medical examination, there wouldn't have been so much trouble." He then scolded me. "You've gone too far in talking to my mother like that. Apologize quickly." While saying this, he tried to hold my head down and make me bow to his mother and apologize, probably because I had previously endured in silence, spending my own money to maintain the relationship with my in-laws. He hadn't found an opportunity to turn against me. Now that we've just had a few words, he's taking sides. I shook him off and left. Normally, Lucas is quite nice to me. When it comes to his mother and sister, he always tells me to be tolerant. This time, I really couldn't hold back anymore. I hid in the car I bought before the wedding and cried. I bought it with my first salary after graduation. It was used as a means of transport. When we got married, I brought it here as part of my dowry. 6 months after we got married, Lucas had been driving the car all along. He claimed that he needed a car for commuting to work, as his workplace was far away. He took the car, in fact. My workplace was even further away than his. I let him have the car. I had to take the subway every day to and from work. I thought about all the things I had done for him, but he just took it for granted. I patted the passenger seat hard, but I accidentally found a gold earring in the gap. I pulled it out along the gap. A butterfly tassel earring appeared in front of my eyes. Margaret and Emily are both scarred. They don't have ear piercings. I began to doubt why Lucas' car had earrings that had been worn by someone else. I couldn't care about being sad. I immediately searched the car carefully. The result: I found a golden hair on the comb I had placed on the passenger seat. This made me think of Emily's pink-purple hair. Before I could find out whose hair it was, I received a call from the hospital. The hospital told me the test results were ready. Before I could go to the hospital to get the test results, Lucas called. He said, "Sophia, you come to the hospital first. The test results are ready. I have something to tell you." I listened. I pondered in my heart. Emily probably also received a call from the hospital. From the tone of Lucas's voice, it seemed that the situation was very bad. My lower abdomen began to ache again. I can't afford to waste any more time. I have to hurry and get the test results. On the way, Margaret and Emily kept calling. I didn't answer any of their calls. When I arrived at the hospital, before I could even go in, Lucas's family stopped me outside. The three of them cornered me. Margaret was the most emotional. Her eyes were full of resentment. She said, "Good for you. I always wondered why we couldn't have children. So it was you who did it. How dare you let the Smith family go without an heir? Our ancestors in heaven will never forgive you." She raised her hand to slap me. Lucas's expression was impassive. There was even a cold smile on his face. I didn't understand what the family was up to, but I wasn't going to take it lying down. I raised my hand to block Margaret's slap. She wasn't very tall. I easily caught her. She struggled to get free and kept cursing me. Suddenly, I let go of her hand. Margaret lost her balance and fell heavily. When she saw Margaret fall, Lucas quickly ran over to help her, mumbling, "My life is so miserable. God, look at this. How can there be such a heartless daughter-in-law in the world? She's trying to kill me. Ouch, somebody help. Someone's killed the mother-in-law." Margaret waved her arms. She cried out loudly. She cursed at me. Unaware passers-by quickly gathered around. They pointed at me and said things. Someone sighed. The world has really changed. I've never seen a daughter-in-law hit her mother-in-law before. No matter what, hitting someone is wrong. I don't think this woman is a good person. Her mother-in-law was so old, and she dared to hit her. Anyone can become a mother-in-law one day. You have to be careful in the future. Don't get your own retribution. Seeing someone's support, Margaret cried even more. Lucas wanted to help her but couldn't. Emily was also sobbing next to her and said, "Sophia, I know you despise our family, but my mother is already so old. You want to drive her to her death. You messed around outside, got an illness, and can't even have children. My mother didn't blame you. She even took you to the hospital for a checkup. What more do you want us to do?" She didn't notice that I noticed her phone was broadcasting live. The onlookers became even more agitated. They all scolded me for not following the rules. A few particularly agitated people even started pushing me. Facing everyone's accusations, I couldn't defend myself. I looked over at Lucas. I used my eyes to ask for help, but he just stared at me viciously, without saying a word. At that moment, my heart sank to the bottom of the abyss. I couldn't read the contents of the medical report. The man who had once doted on me was now watching me being scolded with a cold stare. I also couldn't understand how I had missed the signs. Why did I have to marry into this kind of place? I shook my head vigorously. It wasn't me. She started it. No one would listen to my explanation. They were probably just trying to fight injustice. Or they just liked to join in the fun. But no one believed me. Everyone wanted to do Margaret justice, but no one wanted to find out the truth. The hospital's security arrived in time. They drove away the onlookers. I looked coldly at Margaret, who was lying on the ground pretending to be pitiful. I asked her, "What do you want? What have I done to you? Are you trying to get me killed?" Margaret cried on the ground for a long time. Then she got up and scolded me. "You can't even have a child. I spent so much money to marry you, but you're useless. How dare you still be alive?" I said between clenched teeth. 800. That's a lot of money." Lucas stood in front of Margaret, as if I would do anything to harm his mother. Emily also said with fake tears, "Sophia, I knew you had bad behavior, but I didn't expect you to get this kind of disease. Please, for the sake of our family treating you well, forgive us." Although Emily was talking to me, but her eyes kept staring at the screen of her phone. Suddenly, she kept thanking excitedly, "Thank you, brother, for sending the arrow through the clouds. Everyone come and see. I'll tell you how my sister-in-law messed up." In fact, my original sister-in-law was not her. She stopped in the middle of her sentence, obviously trying to tease, but I immediately grasped the key point in her words. "What do you mean by that? What disease have I got?" I looked at the whole family. From their reactions, I felt that my illness seemed quite serious, and it didn't look good. My heart sank. Could it be that I had a terminal illness? Emily glanced at me and said with a sneer, "Cervical cancer. It's that serious. Why are you pretending? Don't tell me you don't know. If you didn't know, you would have had a medical examination. You must have felt it a long time ago." As she spoke, she looked at me with meaningful eyes. I was full of surprise. I couldn't believe it. At first, I just had a little stomachache. I thought it was because I was tired from work, so I just had a checkup. But I never imagined it could be related to cervical cancer. I rushed up and grabbed Emily's wrist. "Where's my medical report?" She coldly shook me off and turned to the live camera and smiled happily. "Look, this woman is still pretending to be innocent. It's really pitiful. My honest and hardworking brother." She pointed the camera directly at me. I was completely exposed on her live broadcast. I knew that Emily had been doing live broadcasts online. She was a little sister who did nothing all day. She didn't go to work. Every day, she hung out with a group of younger sisters and drank and ate with them. Sometimes when she ran out of money, she would post some photos online. She did some small tricks. A few times, I got up in the middle of the night. When I passed her room, I heard her say inside, "Thank you, big brother." And a few times I accidentally saw her videos on the same city. I don't know if Lucas and Margaret know about Emily's behavior, but I guess they should be tacitly approved. In this way, everyone knows what kind of person will be in Emily's live broadcast room. I saw the screen pop up really fast. "She looks pretty innocent. How could she get this disease? Why do good men always meet bad women, brother? Consider me. Host, get away from her quickly. Don't let her influence you. Host, since your brother doesn't care about her anymore, why don't you let me have some fun with her?" She used some nasty words to attract attention. In order to increase the popularity of the video, she dragged me in front of the camera. However, I'm not someone to be bullied. Before I could react, she had me. When I came to my senses, I kicked her 2 meters away. Her phone fell to the ground. I still didn't feel satisfied, so I stepped on her phone a few times, until the screen went completely black. "You broke my phone. You have to pay for it." Emily came over like crazy, trying to fight with me. The security guards at the hospital came over again to stop the fight. Lucas felt so ashamed. He took us out of the hospital immediately. When we got home, Margaret stopped pretending to be pitiful and begging for sympathy. She said in a firm tone, "I've looked it up online. Your illness is difficult to treat and expensive. You'll also have difficulty having grandchildren in the future. The Smith family doesn't want someone like you, who can't bear children. We must get a divorce. If we get a divorce, you have to return the dowry to me." Margaret said excitedly. Her saliva almost splashed in my face. Emily hugged the broken phone. She gave a sinister smile and said, Mom, she has to pay us back the money for the dowry. And she probably did something bad behind my brother's back. She must have made a lot of money. She made my brother lose face. She has to pay him compensation for the emotional distress. And she has to pay for my phone. I paid $15,000 for that phone. I looked at the cheap knockoff Android phone she was using. I didn't say anything. I turned to look at Lucas. We went to university together. We hadn't been married long, but we had been in a relationship for over 2 years. The foundation of our relationship was quite good. We were always very much in love. Until today, I looked at him. My heart was filled with mixed emotions. I hoped he would say something for me. I didn't expect him to empty his savings account to pay for my treatment. But at least he should have had an attitude. He should have said something. But he didn't. He just hid behind my mother. His tone was hesitant. Sophia, I never thought you would get this kind of disease. Have you done right by me? Can you live with our relationship? There is no future for us. Let's get a divorce. I suddenly laughed. As I laughed, tears came to my eyes. I covered my face with my hands. Tears slipped through my fingers. How did I get this disease? I don't know why I got cervical cancer. My family is innocent. We are not poor. If I really had other thoughts, I definitely would not have married into this unbearable family for love. 6 months after we got married, I saw Lucas struggling to support his mother and sister on his own. I felt bad spending his money, so I, who had never worked before, decided to start working. I started with 5,000 yuan a month. I worked hard and slowly, and now I earn 10,000 yuan a month. I earned it all by working overtime and staying up late. Don't say I don't have the heart to fool around. Even if I did, I wouldn't have the time. And there's the 800 yuan bride price. I also subsidized their family. I paid from the bottom of my heart, but this is the result. I broke down and cried, but the family didn't react at all. Margaret in particular, she said with disdain. What's there to cry about? You feel aggrieved when I say a few words to you. Emily is right. Maybe you got sick because you messed around. You have to compensate my son for his mental distress. It's all because of you. My grandson was born 6 months late. You'll have to find another daughter-in-law to bear a grandson. It'll cost you money and time. It's all your fault. You have to compensate us. Margaret almost blamed me for Lucas's marriage gift. If I stayed in this awful place, I'd be the biggest idiot of all. I turned around and was about to leave. Margaret and Emily stood on either side of me, blocking my way. Margaret gave Lucas a wink. Don't let her get away. No money today. You're not going anywhere. Lucas didn't look at me. He just looked for something on me. Lucas, don't touch me. My eyes were red. My heart was filled with anger. I really wanted to teach this family a lesson, but in reality, they held me tightly. I could only watch as Lucas took my phone and transferred the last 5,000 yuan in my WeChat account. Emily even took the opportunity to kick me in the knee a few times, trying to make me kneel down. But I endured the pain and kicked her hard. She rushed up and slapped me a few times. She said, "What are you so proud of? You're just an unwanted child. Your parents don't care about you anymore. You're really pitiful." The 3 of them tied me tightly with a clothesline. They divided my money in front of me. Then they divided up the gold jewelry I bought for my wedding, and the luxury handbags and cosmetics my parents bought for me before the wedding. They were like thieves who had broken into the house and robbed me. They wanted to take everything I had. Now I finally understood why my parents had been so adamantly against this marriage. Tears of regret welled up in the corners of my eyes. Unfortunately, I had realized too late. I refused to follow the path my parents had set out for me. I had to choose this path with no future. How could I face them again? I watched as Lucas took out the bracelet I had treasured. It's a family heirloom. No way you can take anything else. But not this. My grandmother left it to me. If I lose it, my parents will definitely call the police. My hair is a mess. I shout in desperation. It's the only thing my grandmother left me. I've never dared to wear it. Only when I miss her do I take it out and look at it. Margaret sneers, raises her hand, ready to throw the bracelet on the floor. You think I'm afraid. It's just a dead person's thing. What does it matter if it breaks? I'm scared and my eyes widen. I shake my head. Don't do it. She pretends to do something. But suddenly, she puts the bracelet on her wrist. It fits me perfectly. She looks at it contentedly. I'm relieved. But my heart is still beating fast. Everything is a bit blurry. I think I hear my parents calling me, "Sophia, Sophia. Where are you? You're going to give your mother a heart attack." I thought I heard wrong. But when I saw the frightened looks on Margaret's family's faces, I immediately understood. Dad, Mom, It's Sophia. I'm inside. I've been kidnapped. They tried to stop me, but I shouted out before they could. Lucas tried to pull me into the bathroom to hide. My dad kicked open the door and quickly walked in. Margaret had a long face. She crossed her arms and started scolding. Who told you to come in? You broke my door. You know how much this door costs. You have to pay me, she said, and tried to pull my parents, but my father had already seen me tied up. He suddenly kicked Margaret away and walked towards me. Lucas didn't dare to look at me, stammering, Dad, I was just playing with Sophia. He hadn't finished speaking when my father slapped him, playing. Why don't you tie up your mother and play with her? You've ruined my precious Sophia. My father's eyes were red. His hands trembled as he untied me. Then he picked me up. My mother saw how weak I was. She rushed over and scratched his face. Margaret tried to protect her son, but my mother slapped her too. And she took back my grandmother's bracelet. Margaret sat down on the ground. She started to cry and scream. She shouted, "Why is my life so miserable? Why did I have to meet such an unlucky daughter-in-law, my poor son?" She shouted. Her voice was loud. The neighbors were attracted and came to watch. She and Emily had offended many people. Everyone was waiting to see what would happen. No one wanted to help. My father waved his fist and said, "Don't give me that. If you're so capable, call the police. If you dare to cry again, I'll make sure your family has a funeral. You kidnapped and abused our Sophia. I won't let you get away with it." After he finished, my father hugged me, took my mother by the hand and turned to leave. I vaguely heard someone whispering approval. They said the family deserved it. Tears slid down my face. I cried out in anguish, "Dad, Mom, I know I was wrong. It's all my fault." My father gave me a disappointed glare. Then he sighed. I wanted to say something more, but suddenly I fainted. When I woke up, I was already in the hospital. My parents were sitting by the bed. Their faces were full of worry. My heart tightened. I thought they already knew I had cervical cancer. I buried my head in the quilt and apologized for my previous confused admission of guilt. I also told them what the Lucas family had done to me after they found out I had cervical cancer. My parents glanced at each other. My mother asked first, "My child, who told you that you had cervical cancer? The doctor just gave you a full body checkup. You are in perfect health. It's just that in the past 2 months you haven't been eating or sleeping regularly. This has caused an endocrine disorder." I froze for a moment. I asked, "Does that mean I don't have cervical cancer?" "Yes, you are in such good health. It's not for nothing that your father and I fed you so much meat, eggs, and dairy since you were little. We've raised you to be so strong. Otherwise, with all the suffering you've endured in recent months, it would have been more than just physical weakness." My mother poked my forehead helplessly. Her eyes were full of relief. The joy of surviving the ordeal made me incredibly happy, but I still wasn't completely relieved. I insisted that my parents take me for a more comprehensive examination. The results came back. I was indeed very healthy, no cervical cancer, and no other problems either. Since I don't have cervical cancer, then who does? The only person I had the physical with was Emily. Thinking about this, I gave a small smile. It's really retribution. Whoever does bad things will be punished. It's none of my business anyway. I let out a sigh of relief. It felt like I was being reborn. I took my parents' hands and was ready to go celebrate with a big meal. My father smiled. He immediately called to book a restaurant. But when I saw that familiar figure, I immediately pulled my parents and hid around the corner. I took out my phone and took a photo. My parents were puzzled by my sudden behavior. Then, their eyes widened at the same time. They saw Lucas walk intimately with a blonde woman into the obstetrician's office. I observed the color and length of the woman's hair. I was sure that she was the one who had used my comb. The joy I felt just now was instantly replaced by anger. I didn't expect the seemingly honest Lucas had a secret child, especially since the woman's belly looked like it was about to give birth any day now. Lucas and I had only been married for 6 months, so the child must have been conceived before we got married. Look at the way the woman was dressed. She looked exactly like Emily. She was dressed in a strange way, and she had blonde hair that looked like it had been permed. I didn't need to ask. I knew right away that she was Emily's best friend. I clenched my fists. I wanted to confront Lucas, but then I thought, it's no use. The betrayal is a done deal. It doesn't matter whether he admits it or not. I just want them to pay for what they've done. They bullied me so much. If my parents hadn't arrived in time, I don't think I would have been able to get away. Thinking about this, I looked back at my angry parents. They looked so determined. If I just nodded, they would immediately rush in there and sort Lucas out. I was so moved. I turned around and gave them a big hug. That's my parents. They'll always support me unconditionally. They're also my greatest support. Someone like Lucas is not worth their trouble. My whole family owes me. I'll get it back little by little. After my hard-nosed persuasion, my parents finally let go of the Lucas incident. They went out to eat with me. Is that her? The woman who cheated on her husband. It seems she has some kind of cancer. It's cervical cancer. I heard from her husband's sister. It's because of some bad habits. Now she's still broadcasting live. Oops, we have to stay away from this kind of woman, in case we get infected. More and more people gathered around, pointing at me. I can't find my phone. I immediately used my mother's phone to open Emily's live broadcast room. On the screen, Emily was wearing a delicate, spiritual little girl makeup. Her eyes were full of tears. The table in front of her is covered with photos of me. There are wedding photos and portraits. She's still in the broadcast room complaining to netizens, saying that I don't come home at night, secretly seeing men, making money by improper means. She also said how much her brother loves me, endures humiliation for my sake, willing to suffer. The netizens are all very angry. The screen is full of pop-up comments scrolling rapidly, all personal attacks against me. Occasionally, a few sober netizens asked her to produce evidence, but they were quickly drowned out by the new insults. More importantly, many netizens who didn't know the situation sympathized with her. Gifts kept coming in. Through the screen, I could sense Emily was on the verge of bursting out laughing. Of course, she couldn't help laughing. This was the first time she had received so much attention and gifts, more than she had earned in a year, shaking her flower hand. The people around me completely ignored them. I watched the live broadcast in front of them. Their expressions were all different. She's so arrogant. She's not even apologizing after all this. She's got no shame. She's got no sense of shame. If she were my daughter, I'd have taught her a lesson long ago. Look at how her parents spoil her. You never know. Maybe she's just following in their footsteps. Look at her mother, all dressed up in mink and gold. Her father seems like a pretty honest guy. Sigh. Someone started to make malicious guesses about my parents. I said it's fine for me, but I can't say that about my parents. I really couldn't hold back anymore. I rushed up to that person and scolded them right in the nose. Who do you think you are to tell me what to do, is it? Because your family has a bad influence that you have turned out to be such a blabbermouth. You can't get ahead yourself, so you can't stand to see others doing well. You're so bitter. I spat out a mouthful of venom. Everyone around me believed what Emily said. They thought I was so brazen as to cheat on my husband. Everyone was very angry. They wanted to do something about it. My father saw the situation was getting out of hand. He quickly pulled me behind him to protect me. He said, "If you have any complaints about my daughter, you can direct them to me. I'm warning you. If anyone dares to say anything bad about my wife and daughter, I'll sue you until you go bankrupt." After he finished speaking, he gave the troublemaker a fierce glare. My father is 9 meters tall. He weighs 200 pounds. No one dares to confront him. The person who started the rumor shrunk his neck. He quietly walked away. The others also left one after the other. My father realized that the outside world was not safe for me. Rumors about me were spreading everywhere. He quickly packed his things and took me home. Of course, he didn't forget to ask the company lawyer to sue the people who started the rumor. Maybe making money online is too easy. Emily made a fortune out of this story. She even got a lot of rewards. In the following days, she found all kinds of ways to slander me. She said that I had had more than 10 lovers. Even her brother was described as a husband who pretended to be asleep. I couldn't help thinking that it was a waste that she didn't write exaggerated stories. A few days later, the situation became more and more serious. It became a hot topic all over the city. Emily has told all the stories she can think of. Margaret has also joined her in the broadcast. Margaret's stories are not as appealing as hers. Most of them are about me mistreating my mother-in-law and not feeding her. Netizens are very interested in this matter. Someone filmed Margaret crying on the hospital floor that day and uploaded it online. My name has once again become a hot search topic. This time, netizens are cursing me. They are also cursing my parents. My father's company's legal department was kept busy. As soon as they caught something, they sent a lawyer's letter. I was a little worried. I asked my father, "Dad, if we keep suing like this, will our family be able to hold on?" My father waved his hand and said, "Don't worry. Although our family doesn't have anything special, we have plenty of money. When you were suffering in that family, I turned my grief into motivation. I tripled the family's assets, and we demolished your grandmother's old house." After hearing all this, My mind was in a complete mess. I couldn't even begin to count how much money my family had. When I was little, the family's total assets were less than 10 million yuan. My parents didn't want me to become spoiled, so they only gave me a little more pocket money each month than an average family. Ever since I was a child, my parents have always taken care of everything for me. I've never known hardship. But since I married into the Smith family, I've truly come to understand what it means to be poor, thinking about the fact that my parents have recently made a lot of money but can't spend it. And as their daughter, I can't help them. I feel so bad. And thinking about the hard times we've had in the Smith family, I couldn't help but slam my fists against the sofa. When my parents saw me like this, they immediately took out the car keys and let me drive it whenever I want. It was a way for them to make up for the hard time I'd had. I was so moved that tears streamed down my face. I took the keys without saying a word. Not long after I got the car keys, the private investigator called me. After confirming that I didn't have cervical cancer, I immediately hired the private investigator. I asked him to keep an eye on the Smith family. A few days later, the investigator found out that Emily had gone to the hospital. I paid the investigator a little extra. I got Emily's medical report from him. As expected, Emily did have cervical cancer. Without saying a word, I posted her medical report online. Lucas was no exception. I didn't let him off the hook either. In the 6 months we were married, I kept track of every penny he spent. I also prepared medical reports showing my good health and a video of him going to the gynecologist with Chloe. This incident is now common knowledge. This is the first time I've publicly explained myself. It immediately attracted a lot of attention. Soon someone discovered that the bill showed that I had paid for almost every expense of the Smith family, from furniture and appliances to a clove of garlic and a slice of onion. It was all charged to my account. 6 months after the wedding, I was solely responsible for the Smith family's expenses. After my father saw the news, he used their company's Weibo account to explain things on my behalf. His brand has been developing well. It is now an up-and-coming brand in the country. The reviews are quite high. The official Weibo account clarified the matter, further proof that what I said was true, and my college classmates also came out in support of me. In this way, with everyone's dissemination and processing, my story became that of a rich girl who married for love, not sparing a break with her parents. After marriage, she worked hard to support her in-laws, but in the end, she was betrayed, and the mistress turned out to be the husband's sister's best friend. Netizens have apologized one after another, admitting that they were misled by Emily. No wonder she knows the details and positions of the affair so well. It turns out that she has experienced it herself. This person is really unreasonable. She blames others even though she is sick. It's really infuriating. This kind of internet behavior that exploits enthusiastic netizens is really offensive. I heard that she has cancer. She may not have much longer to live. More and more netizens have begun to criticize the Smith family. This man is really infuriating. He had the opportunity to be with the rich girl, but he chose to like the ordinary girl instead. The baby is already 8 or 9 months old. They've only been married for half a year. This behavior is immoral. Can the Smith family just disappear? Are you using us enthusiastic netizens as tools? I want to apologize for being rude to Miss Sophia before. Please accept my sincerity. Everyone is talking about it. Without exception, they are all blaming the Smith family. They support my point of view, but I don't want them to look at me differently because of who I am. I just want to expose the truth. So, those who have cursed me, it's useless to apologize. My father will hold them responsible one by one. I didn't expect it to come to this. Emily will still come to me for help. She said, "Sophia, I know I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. Just forgive me this once. I don't want to die. I really don't want to die. Your family is so rich. Just lend me $1 million to treat my illness. I promise. Once I get better, I'll pay you back." She was crying so hard on the phone, her voice was hoarse. I knew she didn't really realize her mistake. She just didn't want to die. I'm sitting on the cruise ship my dad bought me. I'm watching the seagulls flying around. I casually say, "This doesn't make sense. Didn't you make a lot of money from your live streams before? How come you don't even have enough money for the doctor's bill?" My mom took all the money. I really don't have the money to pay for treatment now. Sophia, you can't just abandon me. We're in this together. She's still trying to pressure me with morality. I said calmly, "Oh, I think it's your brother and his new wife-to-be who are getting married. I remember your brother had a few $100,000 in savings. Is their marriage more important than your life? Can't they just give you the money to help you out first? You're their younger sister and best friend. They're actually not going to help you out, and you're still helping them. If I were still alive, I wouldn't let you suffer. I'm basking in the warm sunshine, relaxing and chatting away. The phone suddenly hangs up. I don't know what Emily will do next. After all, it's not uncommon for mentally unstable girls to do extreme things. Emily didn't end up killing them herself. The next morning, the news reported that the Smith family of 3 and Chloe were all dead. The suspect was arrested. It was Chloe's husband. He and Lucas grew up together. After drinking, he found out that Lucas had been cuckolding him. He was so angry. He took a knife and rushed to the Smith family. At that time, Emily was asking Margaret for money. The whole family was there. They were all caught red-handed. I heard that the scene was particularly scary. Blood sprayed onto the ceiling. It happened so fast. Lucas and I hadn't yet divorced. According to the law, all their assets will go to me. I decided to quit. My family has more than enough money. Why bother with their dirty money? I donated all their assets to charity, thinking about all the money they had worked so hard to save. And in the end, it was all donated. I couldn't help but laugh. If they really become ghosts, I guess they will feel the pain too.